Hey guys, I recently gave this presentation to my Limitless Mastermind members at the Miami retreat and it got good reviews. People really seemed to enjoy the frameworks I was sharing. So I thought I'd do it for you guys here on YouTube. And the goal here really is to share whatever the best practices, frameworks, and strategies that have worked for me to help start 3 7-figure companies and do this all the while being, a physician, an entrepreneur, an investor and other things. So if this is valuable to you, fantastic. Take whatever frameworks that can be helpful to you, because these are the things that really help me, achieve a certain level of success. And so with that said, the theme I want to share is really ideas to empires, how to dominate in 2024. Let me ask you a question. Where is the richest place on earth? And when I ask that, things come to mind. For example, this picture here is Dubai, one of the most opulent, luxurious places on the planet. Or is it this place? This is the Loop, Infinite Loop, which is in Silicon Valley. This is the headquarters of Apple, the newest headquarters of Apple in Cupertino. Is it the New York Stock Exchange, where titans come to play? This is much of the world's economy is dependent on what happens in Wall Street. Is it the oil fields of Saudi Arabia, where there's huge deposits of oil and gas and reserves? And this is what's, commandeering the wealth of the world. But honestly, if I had to be very candid with you, the richest place in the world is the cemetery. It's the graveyard. There are so many songs never sung. There are so many business ideas that never took off. There's so many books that were never written. There's so many businesses that never were launched, right? This is where ideas and dreams go to die. How many ideas are still in your brain that have not taken birth? I don't want them to be in the graveyard. And that is the ultimate travesty and tragedy. So let's take these ideas you have and give them life and take them to the next level. One of the foundational beliefs that I find to be very helpful for entrepreneurs and real estate investors as well as physicians is the time from ideation to execution. If you can collapse that time, you're going to be one of the most successful people in the world. The problem is a lot of people have ideations, but either it's too long and prolonged time before they finally execute, or they never execute at all. And so if you want to have an empire, if you want to be a tycoon, if you want to grow your brand and your company, you must take these ideas and create empires. So the 3 concepts that I've seen is the poor people worship money. They're scared of money. They feel beholden to it. The rich people, they run around chasing money, hoping that they can grab some. The wealthy people, they attract money to them, right? The money comes to them. They've become an abundance magnet, a wealth magnet. If money is a currency, a velocity of some sort, they're in the stream of that, and it flows toward them. And they don't just hold on to it. They use it, they manifest it, they invest it, they compound it, and they use it freely so it can build more wealth. Now I want to share with you a concept of the mastermind. And the reason why I started up Mastermind and why I've been part of many masterminds was by this gentleman. Many of you know him, many of you don't. His name is Napoleon Hill. And in the 1930s, 1920s, he came up with these ideas that have been in existence for many, many years, but he finally put a name to them and described the concept, and he called it the mastermind. And this example here is 4 men. They're called the vagabonds. It's one of the earliest examples of a mastermind. You can see here these 4 gentlemen. They're prominent people in American history. So we have here from left to right, we have Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Harvey Firestone, and John Burroughs. And what they would do is these vagabonds, what they would call themselves. They would arrange camping trips for just the 4 of them. There was goals to break bread together, to eat dinner together. And the goal is to learn from other smart and successful people who are not involved in your business. This gave them broader perspectives. They had insights on society, on the economy, labor, capital, on government regulations. And each of them were very intelligent, so then they could cross-breed ideas, synergies, right? And the actual definition that Napoleon Hill states in Think and Grow Rich is the coordination of knowledge and effort of 2 or more people who work toward a definitive purpose in the spirit of harmony. So many of you are asking, hey, this is the first time I've ever heard of this mastermind principle, or hey, maybe I've heard of it, but how do I even get started, or how do I be part of one? And that's a good question. Mastermind groups can be difficult to find. They're usually very private and with a very good reason. For a mastermind group to work, you must trust everyone in the mastermind. This group of people are brought together to enlighten, challenge, and share some of the emotional baggage at times. It can provide a safe place for people to connect, collaborate, celebrate, strategize, and be held accountable. This concept is very powerful. So Napoleon Hill further states, now here are some of the most interesting facts about the mastermind, which gives you an idea of how important it is and how necessary that you embrace this principle and make use of it in attaining success in your chosen occupation. First of all, it is a principle through which you may borrow and use the education, the experience, the influence, and perhaps the capital of other people in carrying out your own plans in life. It is the principle through which you can accomplish in 1 year more than you could accomplish without it in a lifetime if you depend entirely on your own efforts for success. What I take that to mean is really you could do it on your own, but with collaboration and synergy, 1 + 1 = 5, and you can get things done very quickly. And even in the Roman times, there was masterminds, right? We had the triumvirate, Caesar, Pompey. Even in Roman times, we had the first triumvirate, which is a group of 3 men who essentially ruled all of Rome, right? It was Julius Caesar, Pompey, and Marcus Licinius Crassus, right? They were called the first triumvirate. So this has been around since the dawn of time, where groups of men or women got together and created this powerful concept called the mastermind. And now the question really is, are you ready to capture this powerful group of people who can propel you toward the next level of your greatness? In our mastermind, our first goal is this: to meaningfully connect to philosophically aligned physicians to launch, grow, and expand or partner on your main goal. The second goal is to make deep connections and develop growth-oriented friends. See, in life, there's many types of friends out there. There are growth friends, there are nurturing friends, there are old family friends, there are colleagues, professional colleagues, aspirational friends who one day you want to be friends with. And one of the most powerful sets of friends is really the set of growth-oriented friends. People who, when you talk to them, they have substantive ideas. They are not jealous of you. They're always encouraging of you. They expect more and greatness out of you. They help you accomplish your goals. By you surrounding yourself with these kind of people, which sometimes is not common when we get into our 30s or 40s or 50s, is very powerful. And the third type of goal for these masterminds is also to get away from the day-to-day of operations and of life and of our typical family routines. And we want to have fun, we want to unwind, and we want to savor these experiences. So these audacious tribes, here's the top 8 things that you can really take away when you're part of these audacious tribes. 1, you reveal blind spots, and we all have blind spots. I've had a ton of blind spots, and when I go to these things, it's great because people see, hey, look, hey, have you thought about it this way? You know what? I noticed you're going this way, but you're missing some of this here. And so these blind spots are very powerful for us to have a complete picture of where we want to go and who we are as a character and how we can improve. Ignite hidden passions and pursuits. 3 is identify misalignment and create congruency. If your companies are not in alignment, your employees are not aligned, your goals and of your personal and professional life are not aligned, that misalignment is going to slow you down. So when you have congruency, you can go fast and you can be fulfilled. These masterminds are also very powerful, these accountability partners, because they provide someone to hold you accountable to make sure that what you say you're going to do, you actually end up doing. We all have limiting beliefs, but imagine all these people around you helping you crush your limiting beliefs. You also eliminate success interrupts. A lot of times we take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And I think the main reason that happens is we have a natural thermostat in life. And if we hit our goals or what we think we're supposed to hit, then we automatically take our foot off the accelerator, or we slow down our efforts because we're like, hey, this is good enough. And these blind spots, another form of blind spots, is what people around you can see and help you overcome. You also want to discover the 1 or 2 KPIs to guarantee success. KPIs stand for key performance indicators. These are the metrics that if you measure them, you're going to achieve your goals. See, you got to control the controllables, right? You can control the inputs. You can usually not control the outputs most of the time. So by you hitting a certain kind of input consistently, it's almost like you can guarantee the output. And finally, you want to forge deep connections. And in this case, I have a group of physicians who are like-minded, who are entrepreneurial, who really want to grow their practice. They want to grow themselves. They want to grow their families. And if they have some interest outside of medicine, they want to grow that as well. And so they all come together as physician wealth architects. So one of the themes of the conference was how to achieve our freedoms. And for me, the freedoms that I was chasing when I started this journey was I wanted time, right? I wanted more time for myself, with my family, and to pursue things I cared about. Next was financial. I really wanted financial freedom. The third is I wanted health and vitality. I wanted to like anti-age. I wanted it to be like, human optimization, biohacking kind of thing, full of vitality. So I have the energy to, do everything I want in life. Then I wanted to be location independent, where I didn't want to be forced to go into a clinic or a space anywhere in the country. I wanted to be able to work from anywhere. And then finally, mindset freedom, the resilience to handle, relationship tumultuosity, mindset freedom, the capability to handle strained relationships, the capability to handle ups and downs in the business, the capability to handle economic challenges, health challenges of family members, anything that can come across my plate. I want to be able to handle it and thrive in that state. And then finally, if I had to have a bonus freedom, it'd be the freedom of relationships. Freedom to really thrive in all your relationships with your personal, your professional, your family, your loved ones, your parents, your spouses, your siblings, but also, friends, colleagues, and really just, mentors, coaches, all of it. So those are what I call sort of the 5+1 or the 6 freedoms. This is an example of, a group of folks I was masterminding in 2022. We met in LA at an event. This is us recently in 2023 at another mastermind. And, it's, as you can see, it's growing and it's a diverse group of people, but this is you want to be around your tribe. And so guys, at this point, if you're listening to this and if this is providing any value to you, then I'm truly grateful. And here's why I believe you're legendary. The fact that you're here, that you're paying attention and you're like taking all of this into account means you're tapping into your innate genius. You really are more of an abundance mindset thinker. You believe in income and impact. You've learned to create time by learning to say no. One of the most powerful things a visionary, a leader, a freedompreneur can say. You also know that you're stronger together and you're not competitive, you're collaborative. You're also a meta learner. That means you're rapidly acquiring useful skills. And then finally, you invest time, energy, money, and life into things that matter. Here's a quote by Albert Einstein, which I like. The significant problems we face cannot be solved at the same level of thinking that were at when we created them. So here are the 11 power frameworks that have really served me well, and hopefully it can help you in your journey to really dominate 2024. The first principle is the one thing principle. This is a book I read by Gary Keller, and he really talks about, the 80-20 principle. 20% of the things you do get you 80% of the results. Well, there's something called the extreme Pareto principle, where 1% of the things you do get you 99% of the results. And so to really end of 2023 and launch 2024 with a bang, I want you to do that. Figure out the one thing that if you did that, it would be the game changer. And again, this is just a refresher for many of you, where sometimes 20% of our inputs lead to 80% of our outputs, right? 20% of our efforts lead to 80% of the results. This is first introduced by Pareto, an Italian economist, and it's found to be true in multiple disciplines, whether it's in real estate, in people, in academic testing, and the quality of any set or group of people. Just a really important philosophy to have in your mind. So now that I've sort of talked about few things create the most results and really diving into more of the macro level, I also want to honor the folks who are artists and who really focus on every little detail, because if you want to be successful, you still must sweat the small stuff. And there's a podcaster, YouTuber named Stephen Bartlett, and he is one of the top, YouTubers out there. He has a book and a show called The Diary of a CEO. And the interesting thing is, he says, the secret, in my opinion, is that we sweat the small stuff more than any other team I've ever encountered. We obsess over thousands of small details that I believe most people would dismiss as trivial, crazy, or a waste of time. And for example, he does sometimes 50 hours worth of work for one YouTube video. So that's the insane amount of energy you devote to really mastering this stuff. And, Elon Musk, thousands of hours toward, the Cybertruck, the Model S, or, SpaceX. Similarly, Steve Jobs, inside the MacBook Pro, he wanted it to look beautiful as well, because he felt like if it's not beautiful on the inside and out, then it's just not good enough. His engineers would say, why would you do that, Steve? It doesn't make sense because no one's going to look at the inside. He goes, but we know. right? There are a lot of big levers that move, machines and our life. And sometimes the difference between great versus outstanding versus limitless is these 2 millimeter shifts. And so that is also important. It's also to know when to go that deep and use these 2 millimeter shifts. And one last thing, Walter Isaacson, who's written some of the seminal biographies on some of the top people out there, including Steve Jobs and including Elon, he takes almost 2 to 3 years to write every biography. I mean, that is a lot of research, a lot of background. He speaks not only to the people that are involved that he's doing the biography on, but their family, and then at least 2 sets of people away from the main person he's interviewing for the biography. This is an example of really going deep, and instead of mailing it in, it's just bringing it out full on. The third framework I want to share is called Kaizen. Kaizen is essentially a Japanese word meaning constant, never-ending improvement. And along those lines, there's this quote I like: when you go to your limits expand. This was first introduced by Toyota, and what they would do is on their assembly lines, they would figure out what are the micro improvements we can do consistently, the 1% improvements over time that can optimize a process. So these micro improvements over time stack amongst each other, and they can compound. Similar to how money compounds, improvement and behavioral changes can compound as well. And this is why Toyota has become one of the most successful car companies of all time, and why they continue to outpace many of their competitors. The next is number 4, learn true confidence. When it comes down to it, really, what is confidence? Confidence is having full control of your central nervous system, right? Because when you're fearful, when you're afraid, when you're not confident, either there's not been enough reps, you haven't achieved mastery of some topic, and or even if you have the physical skills, the mindset of the comfort, so you can go do it in almost an instinctual way, in a way that is less excitatory on your nervous system, because it's more of a routine thing, because it's of course, excellence has become a habit versus an objective, right? And so that's the key. When you can control your central nervous system, you can have willpower on speed dial, you can have confidence on speed dial. So the unstressed mind is really much more prefrontal cortex. It has tight control of thoughts, emotions, and actions. The stressed mind is more of the amygdala, the fear center of your brain. You have weaker control of your thoughts, emotions, and actions. And this is an example. When you're thinking more of a strategist, you have more parasympathetic drive. So when parasympathetic drive is greater than sympathetic drive, you have, for example, in this picture, you can see the pupils are constricted and the focus is broad. You can see more of a divergent focus, and you can see the whole forest. But when you're in fear state, when you're super excited, when you're super stressed, your pupils dilate, sympathetic is greater than parasympathetic, and boom, that person is looking only at one tree in the forest. So this is why, in general, you want to shift more toward parasympathetic versus sympathetic. Again, the concept of controlling the nervous system. So as I mentioned, confidence is knowing you can control your nervous system. That's a trainable capability. The fourth framework is vitality ROI is much, much greater than money. What do I mean by that? I really believe in your 30s, in your 40s, in your 50s, if you spend an unreasonable amount of time in health optimization, even money as well, the ROI increases your income, impact, energy, drive, and enjoyment of life. An example of this is really this vitality pyramid. See, 30s and 40s and 50s, this is the time to devote to all of this, because the way human beings are now predicted to live, we should probably sail into our 80s, 90s, and 100s. And if the technology continues to evolve with CRISPR, with artificial intelligence, with gene sequencing, with stem cells, and the like, 150 years of age is probably not unreasonable. That is why now is the time for most people to really create that foundational health. Sleep, mindfulness, nutrition, and movement. Next, then you should move to supplements and adaptogens and hypernutrients, as well as advanced testing, intermittent fasting, and breath work. After that, they can move on to technology such as, the Oura Ring and doing red light therapy and EEGs and meditation training. There's something called the Da Vinci Protocol. Essentially, you're doing oxygen training, your electromagnetic therapy, as well as peak VO2 training. And then finally, there's things like PRP, peptides, hormone replacement, stem cells. So if you start stacking all of this up, you can essentially almost freeze aging. And there's a person named Brian Johnson, and he has something called the Blueprint. And he's doing exactly that. He's done the world record for his telomeres not shortening, which is a form of aging. He's physically and biologically a lot younger than his age. The future is bright, and before you do more of these advanced maneuvers, obviously this foundational pyramid is a must for anyone who's really trying to be a high achiever and a high performer. There's a concept called anti-fragile by Nassim Taleb, and this is a physiologic version of this concept of being resilient. By you doing some of the things I talked about on the previous slide, you can potentially increase your functional capacity to where you have this delta of built up resilience. And so if there's a physical, emotional, traumatic issue, you have an acute phase response, then you have a recovery, and you go back to your previous level of resiliency, and you never hit that tipping point. But most people, if they don't have reserves built up, financial reserves, mental reserves, psychological reserves, resilience, behavioral set, grit, then what happens is their functional capacity takes a huge hit from the acute hazard. They go past their tipping point, but then there's recovery, but they never recover back to their previous selves, and there's a permanent loss. And that degradation over time can be compounded, and you have a permanent loss that you never recover from. These are sort of the reminders of what I call the eightfold path to epic success in health and vitality. It's hypernutrition, it's anti-fragile, it's reframing setbacks by controlling the narrative. It's this vitality pyramid we talked about, from sick to stable to vital to invincible. It's having this restorative mindset, enhancing muscle protein as a metabolic engine, breath work, which helps you practice courage, and then obviously sleep optimization, the number one longevity tactic. Number 4 framework is to apply the Thiel effect. So this is a good quote from Jim Rohn. Don't wish it were easier, wish you were better. So Peter Thiel, one of the top venture capitalists of our time, he's also the founder of PayPal, and he is one of the founding partners of Palantir, a venture capital company, has a quote, and I think this was in his book, 0 to 1. It's to convert your 10-year goals to 6-month deadlines. Right? Just this one reframing of a thought process is so powerful, because if you have 10 years to do a goal, you're going to pace it out. You're going to slow it down. And probably what you're doing could eventually work to eventually get to your goal in 10 years. But if you have to time collapse into 6 months, then you need massive action. You need to completely rethink your assumptions. You need to rethink your team. You need to rethink everything. And even if you don't hit the 10-year goal, but you hit the 3-year goal, you're going to be super pleased with yourself and much better off than if you had just treated it as a traditional linear goal. This eventually converts your goal from a linear goal to an exponential goal. So a powerful strategy and a powerful question to ask. The 5th framework is task execution versus task selection. So what do I mean by that? A lot of times we are so excited, we're very pumped up, we're ready to go do things, but sometimes we don't know what to do. And so half that hour, let's say we have an hour free, that shows up a couple of times a week. But if the task is not fully delineated, if we don't know exactly what we're supposed to be doing that hour, 30 minutes of that could be wasted just setting up the task, versus boom, you're going in, you know what to do, you knock it out, maybe you get done in 45 minutes. So what I urge is, don't waste your energy on task selection. Instead, use the full energy, the full deployment of your resources on the execution of the task. And there's something called the Limitless MD Weekly Planner, where you set your intention for the week, you've come up with your 5 most important tasks, and you hit those first. And only if you finish those 5 are you allowed to go after your next 5. And this is what our coaching clients and our mastermind members, this is how they operate. And that's how they're able to do more work in 90 days or 12 weeks than most people do in a year. The 6th framework is involving your personal evolution, and your personal evolution depends on your reflection. Sometimes taking a pause and listening to the sort of the whispers of destiny, listening to your subconscious and your conscious, and really figuring out where you need to go and what you need to be is important. So I really like this quote. The ego sees the problem and consciousness sees the solution. Young Pueblo. These are things I do during my white space time on my calendar. There are times in your calendar where you need white space. This is times where you have nothing booked. You're in your office, you're in your study, and you are just there thinking. And you're maybe just have a blank piece of paper with a pen. You have some classical music, some epic music, some kind of alpha binaural beats music. And all you're doing is you're just thinking, how am I better? How am I different now? How have I grown? How have I stayed the same? What do I need to start doing? What do I need to stop doing? What are the notions or beliefs that I can drop or get rid of? These are the powerful questions. What if I did the opposite for 24 hours? What if it were easier? Or what if it were impossible to fail? These are the kind of questions that are important. Here's some more questions, What do I need to unpack? What are the identities, the fears, or the stories that are holding me back? What am I afraid of? What are my new limits? And I really like this question. I got this from Tim Ferriss. He goes, what do I believe or want to share so strongly? I would put it on the billboard in the middle of Times Square. That's sort of your ethos, your creed, your belief, your model of the world. All right, guys, we're getting close to the finish line here. The seventh framework is not sure what to do. Each time I achieve my life's purpose, I discovered it's only another step in my journey. Muhammad Ali. So sometimes, guys, your dreams are not your destiny. And I found that to be true. I thought, hey, my goal was to be a cardiologist. And when I achieved that, I'm like, no, my goal is to be a functional medicine doctor. And then when I achieved that, no, my goal is to be a real estate investor. I achieved that. I'm like, hey, no, my goal is to be a business coach and a mindset coach for physicians. I achieved that. Right now I'm like, oh, maybe I should, help multiple companies go off the ground or launch a mastermind, or your purpose keeps evolving. And so it's really powerful to keep an open mind as you go through the journey. And perhaps you're all of this, right? There's not just one path to success, but you need to start somewhere. Naval Ravikant says this: most of life is a search for who and what needs you the most. And there's a Rumi quote that says, what you're looking for is also looking for you. So I really like those quotes here. Now let's get into the bucket theory, the 5 bucket theory. And so as you're going through life, you start filling up these buckets, and you want to fill them up in the right order and the right syntax, right? So what you know, what you can do, who you know, what you have, and what they think of you. And so really what this means is, what you know is your knowledge. What you can do is your skills. Who you know is your network. What you have is your resources. And finally, what they think of you is your reputation. As you're starting on in life, you're not sure what to do. What you know is the number one step. You need to pour into yourself and gain all the knowledge. Once you gain all this knowledge, you want to apply that knowledge toward things of utility. So what you can do is your skills. So knowledge leads to skills. Now, because you're knowledgeable and you're very skilled, you get noticed and you are part of the ecosystem of life. Your network starts to expand. So who you know starts to expand. And then because you get paid, because you know people, because of being the right place at the right time, because of other things, you start accumulating resources. So what you have starts to increase. And then finally, that leads to what they think of you. Because you've been able to replicate over and over again, and you're a known entity in a known market with a known skill set, with a ever expanding knowledge base, your reputation increases. Now, if there is a seismic earthquake in your professional life, or an economic cycle changes, or a company goes bankrupt, or something happens, they can take away a lot of things, but they cannot take away your skills and your knowledge. These will stay with you forever. Your network may be falling apart, your resources may be tapped out, your reputation may be tarnished, but you can rebuild all of that. The good thing is your skills and knowledge will always be there. So remember that. This framework has been one of the most powerful ones that I've really leaned into the last couple of years. Alex Hormozi talks about it, Naval talks about it, but I really want to share with you my version of how to use leverage. And Naval talks about this quote: forget rich versus poor, white collar versus blue collar. It's now leveraged versus unleveraged. And in my opinion, there's 6 forms of leverage. You have experience and mentorship, you have capital, you have media, you have artificial intelligence, you have labor, and you have code and technology. And I'll give you examples of each one. So in terms of mastermind, these are the experiences you've had, these are the coaches you've had, these are the mentors you've had, and it's very, very powerful. If you have more of this, you can really leverage that to expand your ideas, expand your reach, expand your capabilities. Next is capital. In this case, for me, I've learned to raise capital. We raised about $250 million so far in my company, Viking Capital. And this is an example of what we call syndications. And that is a form of leverage, right? Now, if a deal comes to me anywhere in the United States, I never have to worry about where do I find the capital, because I press a button and boom, I'm able to raise a tremendous amount of capital for any project that is deemed worthy. In terms of media, podcast, YouTube, like these are things that I'm getting into because I feel like that is a form of leverage that can be really multiplied. One video can get, if it's done right, can get 1 million views, right? Our podcast, the Limitless MD podcast, is in the top 3%. So there's a certain number of eyeballs that's happening to that medium. Newspapers used to be a way of media, but that's a dying breed. You want to know and be careful about what kind of media you're involved in. But it is a powerful lever you need. Artificial intelligence. There's a new one popping up every month at this point, but you really want to get into this and learn how to master and use it because it can amplify, expedite things that you want to get done. It can be a quick access to knowledge. It can be a quick access to essentially a digital or robotic form of labor. A lot of the expertise that you used to pay for is now free. So ChatGPT is just an example of that. Labor. You still need physical people in your company. So I have second in commands or integrators in all my companies, and that's been very powerful. If you're a physician, you need a physician assistant or a nurse practitioner, if you're a practice manager. So all of that's very important. You need admins. That's all labor. And then finally is code and technology. So if you can build a SaaS company, a software as a service company, a software app, a tech stack, you can use that to leverage your company internally, or you can make that a product or service that you can sell for profit as well. That is also a form of leverage. So these are, in my opinion, the 6 forms of leverage that most successful people need to harness so they can really be successful in their business life, in their companies, and whatever they're trying to build. Everyone makes decisions. So this is an interesting framework, right? There's a lot of people who are indecisive and they're like, oh, I don't know what to do. But in a way, that is a decision. So the quote here is this: indecision is still a decision. Status quo is a decision. Progress just happens to be a much more powerful decision. So choose progress. Even if you're not sure what to do, decide, make a decision, move forward. This is from James Clear. He goes, if a decision is reversible, the biggest risk is moving too slow. If it's irreversible, the risk is moving too fast. 90% of all decisions are reversible, so move faster. And this is from Barack Obama. He goes, you don't have to get to 100% certainty on your big decisions. Get to 51%. And when you get there, make the decision quickly and be at peace with the fact that you made the best decision based on the information you had. He's had to make some tough calls and, hopefully he's made a lot of good ones. Number 10, learn to read in between the lines. So what do I mean by that? That means that numbers and data are just part of the story. So for example, for the real estate tycoons out there, remember, good stories always beat good spreadsheets. We don't act because of equations. We act because of beliefs. So you want to share your story, the narrative of why you think the business deal makes sense, the partnership makes sense, the investment makes sense. And finally, guys, this is my last framework, powerful number 11, fear journaling. And I've tried to save the best for last because I find this as one of my favorite exercises, especially when I've been knocked down, when I'm on the ropes, when I'm worried, when I'm fearful and I'm scared. And you're wondering, hey, why would you be like that? Well, we all get there sometimes. The question is, how long do I stay there? And this one exercise has helped me get out of that tailspin very quickly. So what is fear journaling? It's really getting out of your head and onto paper all the things that are freaking you out. So you really want to define your fears so you can use it to propel yourself to success. And here's a 3-step process when you have to make a tough decision, such as quitting your job, for example. Number 1, define it, right? Define the fears. Like if, whatever that tough decision is, to break up with somebody, to quit your job, not make the investment, to make the investment, to buy that dream house, to not buy the dream house, right? To fire someone in your company. Ask yourself the question and figure out everything that could go wrong if you made this decision. So figure out all the cons of the decision. Write it all out there. Also, you should put all the pros as well. Number 2, mitigate. This is figuring out what you can do before making the decision to mitigate these risks. So if you made the decision and these things happened, how could you make that negative outcome less intense or less negative and actually soften the blow of it? And number 3 is repair. This is planning out what you would do if the worst case scenario happened. That way you're prepared. So if all these happens, here's the pros if I made the decision, here's the cons. But if the cons really happen and I did my best to mitigate it, but I really couldn't mitigate most of it, like if you're going to break up with somebody and it's a divorce and the kids are going to be really traumatized, all that, put it all out there and then say, okay, well, if all that does happen, how can I mentally prepare for that? And am I okay with eventually accepting it, knowing that at some point it is going to be better? That way you are physically prepared, mentally prepared, psychologically prepared for all of this. So with that said, guys, these are the 11 frameworks that will help you hopefully crush it and rock it in 2024. Comment below. Tell me which ones that you like the best. Tell me your thoughts on all this. And with that said, guys, thank you. And I'll see you on the next one.